Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Taking Plan Designs to New Heights. I have just a few announcements. For those of you who are requesting credit, please note that to receive CE credit, you must remain logged into the video portion of the webinar for the entire program. Logging into the audio portion only is not sufficient for CE credit. Continuing education credits are being offered for the following designations: CPE, CIMA, CPWA, CIMC, RMA, CFP, and SHRM. Also, at the end of the webinar, we would like to request that all attendees fill out the evaluation form that will pop up. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them through the question box. At the end of the webinar, we'll answer as many questions as we can, but we want to be respectful of your schedule and end on time. If we do not get to your question today, we will definitely follow up with you afterwards. Tomorrow, you will receive a link with an email to replay today's broadcast. So let's get started. We are joined today by Dave Baer, National Director of TPA Markets at Pentegra. Dave has over 30 years of experience in the financial services industry. His vast degree of knowledge and enjoyment for helping advisors better assist their clients and expand their practices has made him the go-to expert for 316 fiduciary outsourcing and TPA services. Dave, I'll hand things over to you and start talking retirement plan design.
Thank you, Lizzie. I'm trying to get, there we go, the page to change. Thank you. Sorry about that, folks. Let me do a quick course overview. We've got some 40 some odd slides today. We're going to get through them all as best we can, and 3 polling questions that Lizzie is going to help you with. Designing an effective qualified plan that meet plan sponsor objectives, it's become somewhat of a lost art. Maybe it's just because I and many of my colleagues are getting old and retiring, although I've not retired yet. It seems that we automatically default to safe harbor and sometimes new comparability, or safe harbor and sometimes new comparability and cash balance. And there are other ways to design a plan to meet an employer's needs. And we're going to go through some case studies today after we talk a little bit more about plan design. And I'll interject some comments, maybe a story or two about some recent activity that I've been involved in where we did just that, where we had to design things uniquely, and it didn't just simply fall on safe harbor so that highly compensated employees or owners could max out. Although that's certainly important, and I don't want to belittle that. Our goals today, we're going to try to appreciate the importance of plan design, of the process, and why it seems to be de-emphasized, and why I think it's important especially for financial advisors, to educate themselves and be able to talk about plan design, at least in the initial stages of working with a prospective client, and then know who to go to get those plan design options fulfilled. We're going to identify some strategies to learn a plan sponsor's objectives, how to meet their needs, and how to apply specific design options. I mentioned some case studies or profiles, if you will, that we're going to go through. So, goals of plan design. We want to ensure that the plan achieves identified business objectives. And that may be as simple as, hey, the owner just wants a plan. They need a plan in order to be competitive with other peer companies. Or it could be the owners need to max out their retirement plan contributions. They've been in business a long time, and now they realize they haven't saved enough money. All of these are viable business objectives, and we'll talk about those. We want to secure tax advantages, obviously, for the plan sponsor, the business owner, and the participants. We want to maximize contributions most of the time. Sometimes that's not a goal of a business owner. Sometimes the retirement plan and what it can provide for a business owner are insignificant to their net worth. And so they have other objectives sometimes for the retirement plan. Provide another source of retirement income, help the sponsor fulfill their fiduciary responsibility to participants. You know, in most plan designs today, a lot of the fiduciary responsibilities are outsourced. Many of you on this call probably serve as 338 investment managers rather than investment advisors. And we here at Pentegra, we serve as a plan administrator, as a named fiduciary. So a lot of the fiduciary responsibilities can be outsourced, but it's still an important topic to be involved in. Plan design is a lost art. I mentioned this earlier, cookie cutter approaches. Safe harbor designs almost as a default. Let's face it, safe harbor designs are very easy to administer, especially, you know, if a plan design is a year of service, age 21 for eligibility, semi-annual entry, safe harbor match every payroll period, that's a plan design that doesn't take a lot of labor to administer. We, Pentegra, and other companies that we compete against, we are in the business of selling labor. That's what we do, and it's highly skilled labor. And administering safe harbor plans doesn't take a lot of labor. So, but there are a lot of defaults in that direction. Many overlook the flexibility that modern documents can provide for. You know, we've gotten away from, in most recent mandatory restatements, fewer and fewer organizations are using true standardized prototypes, and many more are now using volume submitter documents, and volume submitter documents have lots of options available to them. So they are pre-approved, but unlike prototypes, they have lots of flexibility. Sorry about that, folks. So again, more reasons why providers don't focus on plan design is that you know, cookie cutter plans are less costly to administer. They're faster to adopt. They take less time annually for business owners to, you know, provide the information necessary and to have conversations about them. But some miss out on the opportunities that are available when we use plan design. And what we want to do today is talk about the ability to use it as a differentiator to make yourselves more important to your clients. So, Lizzie, first question out there: true or false? Pre-approved plan designs are flexible and can satisfy most sponsors' needs and objectives. Lizzie, you tell me when we're time's up on this true or false question.
Will do. I'll leave the poll up for about another 30 seconds for anyone who hasn't selected an answer yet.
All right. And folks, sorry about the pop-ups. I closed my email so I wouldn't get pop-ups, but I left my internal messaging open, so I may get another pop-up or two. Do my best to just close them quickly. Okay.
The poll is now closed, and the correct answer was A, true.
Thank you. Moving on. So now we're going to talk about designing the ideal plan. Step one, identify plan sponsors' goals and objectives. Seems very basic, but I can't begin to tell you all how often I'm invited into a call by one of our sales team and with an advisor and a client, a prospective plan sponsor, and nobody's asked the plan sponsor what they'd like to do. One time very recently, we were in lengthy conversations about how to maximize, how owners can maximize their own contributions. And I stopped in the conversation and asked the client, I said, how does that sound? Does that match up with what you're interested in? And he said, not really. What I'm really interested in is benefiting my 5 managers. I'm not terribly interested in participating in this plan myself. And so that changed everything about our discussion topics. Once we figure out what the client's goals and objectives are, then step 2 says pick the document format. In all honesty, Pentegra and most of our peers, most of us use volume submitter documents. Not a lot of prototype, standardized prototype documents out there anymore, but some of the big box institutions, those tied to payroll processing, often still use prototype documents. Likewise, we don't see a lot of individually designed documents anymore. Individually designed documents are those that are designed by an attorney and are not pre-approved by the IRS. Each one seeks its own determination letter from the IRS. Step 3, understand the plan design options. I think that actually I think those are reversed in my own opinion. But I didn't author this slide. And then step 4, select the design options that fulfill the goals. And then obviously on a regular basis, we want to have a review with our clients. It's reasonable for a client to want to talk about this on an annual basis. What's changed? What's gone on? Is this still meeting your goals and objectives? And it's not, absent from any conversation about the investments. We're not going to talk today at all about the investments. So some common goals and objectives: contribution, deduction, augmentation, and redirection. Sponsor wants certain employees or groups of employees to receive additional contributions. Sometimes we're trying to maximize owners and highly compensated employees. Sometimes sponsors are trying to avoid corrective distributions when the deferral limits are exceeded based on testing. Sometimes sponsors just want to control their costs. The first 401k plan that I was ever involved in 1984, still a client today, was a business that they did not then, never have, and do not to this day contribute any employer contributions. They were interested in providing for employee elective deferrals only, and they wanted it to cost as little as possible. The owner HCEs do not participate in the plan. Company has other highly compensated employees that do participate. We use prior year testing in order so that we can tell those highly compensated employees each year, based on the previous year, what they can contribute in the then current year, and that's it. So it's a plan design that has lasted time and time again, and it was designed from the very beginning to control costs. Some employers want to recruit and retain the best and the brightest, and a retirement plan can modestly help in that direction. If you think about it, a 6-year vesting schedule is really the longest that you can use in a 401k plan to meet top-heavy minimums. And so 6 years is not a long time to to control vesting in order to retain people, but sometimes it's just enough. So we want to identify the plan sponsor's goals and objectives. We want to stimulate their conversation and their thought process. What's important to you? What would you like to do? Do you want employees to contribute towards their own retirement? Almost always, yes. Do you want to include or exclude certain employees? Sometimes. One of the questions that's not listed here is, and maybe it's something that you would find out otherwise, but tell me if any other family members other than yourself, Mr. Business Owner or Ms. Business Owner, work for the firm. Do you have children, married children, any of their spouses? What does the dynamic look like? And then also I would ask questions about the business structure. You know, so many closely held businesses, small closely held businesses, are S corporations. S corporation owners often take modest salaries and take larger distributions in place of salaries that are subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes. And we want to identify whether that's going on. Nothing is harder to do than maximize overall contributions for somebody who's only paying themselves $75,000 or $100,000 a year in eligible wage, when the actual eligible wage limit for highly compensated employees is well over $300,000. So, obviously we all run into those clients whose CPAs are determined to minimize their wage subject to employment taxes and maximize their distributions in order to avoid those taxes. That works against trying to maximize a 401k profit sharing plan, or cash balance plan for that matter. So, good questions. It's important to find out what is critical to the business owner. Picking the document format, again, I'm going to skip by this. I think by and large, most of the time you're going to be dealing with a provider who is using a volume submitter document. Very rarely anything else. Understanding the options. We're going to expand on this when we get into our case studies, our profiles in a few minutes. But if you think about it, understanding plan design options, it isn't all about profit sharing allocations and rate group testing. If you're familiar with new comparability cross testing, sometimes it's about extra matching contributions. Sometimes it's about higher matching contributions. Sometimes it's tiered matching contributions, things like that, or tiered profit sharing contributions that are more like integrated profit sharing contributions with Social Security and that sort of thing. So there are a lot of different options that are available out there. Correctly executing the plan document is critical. It might surprise all of you in the audience how often a new client comes to Pentegra and we collect their existing plan documents so that we can either map them over or have a discussion with them about the provisions and the elections and ask them if they want to make changes. And we look at the document and no one ever signed it. Well, that used to be a correction under VCP, under a voluntary correction program with the IRS, with a hefty fee of at least $1,500 and some lengthy work on our part. Cure 2.0 gave us broader self-correction procedures. We're not going to get into Secure 2.0 much today, but it gave us broader self-correction procedures so we can actually correct simple things like this, like an unsigned adoption agreement, through self-correction. But it's important to make note that it happens all the time. We get clients all the time who never sign their document. And then reevaluating regularly. Again, I think it's perfectly reasonable for a business owner plan sponsor to want to speak to their TPA and or plan administrator if we're operating in the 316 capacity on an annual basis and talk about the plan. Is it doing what you expected it to do? Is it not doing something you thought it was going to do? And we can make amendments to the plan. We can restate if necessary. Generally speaking, amendments aren't retroactive. They can be retroactive if they are not cutting back or reducing benefits under certain circumstances. We recently worked with a client who had a bundled plan, not with a TPA, and they had in fact a money purchase pension plan from eons ago, and their bundled provider began or allowed them to begin making elective deferral contributions beginning in 2019. So for any of you who are well experienced, you know that money purchase pension plans, they accept employer money only. We had to do retroactive restatements to that plan so that we didn't disqualify the deferrals that have been made since 2019. So we have another polling question. What is the first step in the plan design process? Are we understanding plan design options, pick the document format, identify the plan sponsor's goals and objectives, or select design options? Lydia, are we going for 30 seconds here? Is that about right?
Yes, I'll leave it up for about another 20 seconds, and then I will close it.
All right.
The poll is now closed. The correct answer was C, identify the plan sponsor's goals and objectives.
Thank you, Lizzie. Now we're going to go on to these profiles that I mentioned. Profile 1, sponsor's objective, allow HCs to defer additional amounts, design solution, a safe harbor option. Now, I understand the irony of my talking about there being more options than safe harbor a few minutes ago, and now our first profile or our first case study is a safe harbor option. We have 6 more to go after this, and we'll be talking about other things. Then we'll add some additional things in here to talk about. I promise you. But in this case, a safe harbor option allows highly compensated employees to make additional deferrals without worrying about the testing. In this particular situation, we have we have small company, a few non-highly compensated employees who are participating, a few who are not. So we have an ADR, an average deferral or an actual deferral ratio for our non-highly compensated employees of 4%. That means that under this testing dynamic, a tested plan, our HCEs would only be able to contribute 6%. And so what do we need to do? Well, in this case, they want to contribute 10% or more, and it's going to take a safe harbor election to do that in the most efficient and economical way. We could give additional contributions. We could give QNEX or QMAX, qualified non-elective contributions or qualified matching contributions to our other people. It would be a QNEC since we have 2 non-highly compensated employees not deferring. But in this case, the safe harbor makes the most sense. The pros are that testing is simplified. We automatically pass ADP and ACP. Our HCE's deferrals are not linked to the NHC deferrals. Top heavy is satisfied as well, as long as the only employer contribution is the safe harbor contribution. And the cons, of course, is there's an expense. Participating employees are going to get more than they otherwise would have for using the safe harbor election, and the two that don't participate, well, they might just jump in now that they have 100% vesting in that employer contribution. So this is something that happens to work, and it works a lot of the time. But we're going to talk about some other options here, some other testing things or testing options that sometimes satisfy other needs. Profile 2, we have a sponsor objective of augmenting matching contributions for certain employees and to encourage retention and support recruiting. Although this profile wasn't written with a specific a specific case in mind that we experienced, we had this happen not too long ago. A company in Florida who runs fiber optic cable, if you will, and other cable TV, that certain things, or internet, but they run it in neighborhoods and across country, across the state, that sort of thing. And the people that do that work, they hire them, they train them, and they wanted to specifically benefit those people who are going up a pole, so to speak, because they're expensive to hire, expensive to train, and costly if they leave and go somewhere else. So they wanted to provide an incentive to those people. So what they did was they gave an increased match to these employees who are non-highly compensated employees. They fit that dynamic, and that's something to keep in mind. You can give a different level of matching contribution to non-highly compensated employees and not upset your otherwise working testing dynamic. So if you are otherwise passing ADP and ACP with whatever matching contributions you have, you can give non-highly compensated employees a higher match or a different match without upsetting that testing dynamic. Multiple matching formulas are permitted if the plan passes ACP. And so long as you have a document that allows for that, then you're in good shape. And again, most volume submitter documents allow for different matches or extra matches or something like that. And the extra matches can be designated to specific groups, employee groups that are named. Those named groups, of course, they can't be discriminatory. They have to be, in this particular case that I was mentioning, these were line workers, line workers, and that's a specific group. So in other words, you cannot name all redheaded employees will get the extra match. That's obviously a discriminatory definition. So, but this works. You can do this. It works very well. Pros: targeted groups receive what the employer wants, and the plan sponsor's goals are attained. Cons: the administration is more complex. So what has to happen? Those employees have to be specifically identified in a group, and that has to show up in payroll. It has to be communicated to the employees. It has to be communicated in a summary plan description. It has to be communicated to the TPA or plan administrator doing the non-discrimination testing. Everybody has to be aware of what the dynamic is, what the groups are, and who the people are that fit into those groups. And so it's more complex, more communication, possibly more review at the end of the year. But it does solve the sponsor's need. Profile 3. Allow highly compensated employees additional deferrals by improving ADP, ACP testing results and reduce overall plan costs. Now, we just talked about something like that a minute ago, and we immediately defaulted to safe harbor. But here, we're not going to do that. We're going to exclude one or more groups of non-highly compensated employees. And let's talk about that for a second. So this employer has different departments, and the shipping department has low participation, low deferral rates. The non-highly compensated, the overall non-highly compensated employee ADP, actual deferral percentage test, is 2%. And that means that highly compensated employees are limited to deferrals of no more than 4%. Now, in this particular group, what you can't see are the notes. And of course, it's a perfect world scenario. We designed it to be. So we have 2 highly compensated employees. We have 100 total non-highly compensated employees, 25 of whom are in the shipping department. The other 75 non-highly compensated employees are in various other departments throughout the company. And if we eliminate the shipping department, then our NHCE deferral percentage goes from 2% to 5%. All those other people are deferring at a higher rate. And that means that our highly compensated employees could defer up to 7% instead of up to 4%. And our highly compensated employees just happen to be at the top of the HCE wage, and 7% gets them close enough to their goal that they don't yell and get upset. So what else is involved when we do something like this? We've just excluded 25 people from participating in the plan. But that doesn't mean that they're excluded from our testing. We still have to prove coverage under 410B. We have to determine that we have enough people benefiting from the plan in order to operate this way. It's not just about passing ADP and ACP. We're not actually talking about ACP here. That's the match test. But we have to prove coverage. And in this particular case, again, the numbers work out very simply. We have 2 highly compensated employees participating, so we have 100% there. We have 100% coverage in highly compensated employees. We have 75% of our non-highly compensated employees benefiting from the plan. Now, this is important. That doesn't mean that 75 out of the 100, remember we have 25 in the shipping department, doesn't mean that 75 are actually contributing, but they are able to contribute. So they are benefiting from the plan. There's a difference between contributing and benefiting. And under 410B, benefiting means they are able to contribute. They are eligible to contribute, whether they do or they don't. So in order to pass the average benefits test, we have to have at least 70% coverage. We actually have 75% coverage, and therefore we pass. So we pass, we satisfy 410B. We are satisfying ADP because our HCEs are now contributing no more than 7%, and they're happy, and everything else is glowing. And again, if there's a matching contribution, we still have to pass the ACP test. And had something similar to this just recently. We had a firm that wanted to know that they were trying to decide whether to have a safe harbor plan or not, whether they would pass coverage, whether they wouldn't pass coverage. and we had to, we did some plan design work. We did some preliminary testing for them just to see what it looked like in their world to pass under these circumstances. So again, the pros here. ADP-ACP passes in this perfect world example, and the low participating group is excluded. Compliance testing is more complicated. Has to be looked at every year. Has to be communicated. There has to be a conversation about this on an ongoing basis. If this employer adds a bunch of people to that shipping department, things might change. If this employer loses a bunch of people in the other department, probably won't change very much. If they add a bunch of HCEs, things might change. And what happens to those shipping department people who, remember we said that we had low participation in the shipping department. We didn't say that we had no participation in the shipping department. So now we've taken those few people who are contributing a little bit and told them, sorry, you're out of the plan. So how much dissatisfaction in the company is there, spurred by those people who are now out? Certainly something to be concerned about. Profile 4, sponsor objective, reduce costs through exclusions. Excluding certain HCEs allows additional exclusions of non-HCEs. Sometimes this slide doesn't say this, but it's fairly common especially in law firms. So in law firms, you have partners, you have associates. Sometimes you have voting partners and non-voting partners and associates. So you can have a lot of different levels of highly compensated employees. And it's not uncommon for associates. Remember, associates are often lawyers who are there for a short period of time, maybe 3 to 5 years, and then maybe they're going to move on, or they're going to become partners. They're either on a partner track. If you watch a lot of lawyer shows on TV or movies, they're either on a partner track or they're not on a partner track. You don't have a lot of associates hang around forever in law firms, typically. So in this case, the idea is that we can first of all we can exclude the associates, and that will allow the plan to exclude certain other non-highly compensated employees in order to reduce the number of benefiting employees, participating employees, to save costs. Seems cruel, but it does happen. So we have, in this particular example, we can exclude the 3 associates. We can exclude 10 admins and the 4 investigators, and we can still pass our coverage. So again, HCE coverage is 40%. 2 out of the 5 are covered. We have 40% of highly compensated employees times 70% equals 28%. So we need a minimum of 28% of our non-highly compensated employees to be covered. We can do that with our 6 paralegals. 6 paralegals out of 20 non-highly compensated employees is a 30% coverage rate. That's greater than 28%, which is 70% of the HCE rate. Bingo, we've got a plan that covers only our 2 partners and their 6 paralegals and nobody else. A lot of times this type of work happens when someone says, we'd like to look at a defined contribution plan plus a cash balance plan. And we go through the same exercise of figuring out who can we exclude, who do we have to cover, because the partner's goal in this instance is to cover themselves and only as many other employees as they have to in order to pass testing. So this is an extreme example of how a plan in a small organization can be designed to cover only a very select group of people. The objective is met, contribution costs are reduced, compliance testing is very complex, and I think we take the road here and say there's almost certainly going to be dissatisfaction within the excluded groups. But sometimes we do see this, and we see employers explaining when they hire people, we have a retirement plan, it is only benefiting certain groups. And of course, that's defined in the summary plan description. Profile 5. Looking at my time here, we're doing really well. Sponsor's objective: provide additional matching contributions to certain non-highly compensated employees, simplify compliance testing, and in this case, instead of just providing more to a certain group, the decision was to exclude highly compensated employees from the plan and provide additional matching contributions to select non-highly compensated employees. That's what we did in one that I mentioned a little bit earlier. It was a firm in the Northeast, and when we finally asked the client what they wanted to do, when the advisor, the advisor called us in to talk about maximizing the owner's contributions, but when we asked the owner what they really wanted to do, was to exclude themselves and the other highly compensated employees to benefit their management group, which were non-highly compensated employees, and provide a nominal match for everybody else. So in this example, we have 10 highly compensated employees, 50 non-highly compensated managers, 150 non-highly compensated assistant managers, and 700 other non-highly compensated employees. The 10 HCEs are excluded from this plan. If you have a business where all of your highly compensated employees are owners or directly related to the owners group, and the owners and owners group are quite wealthy, again, if a retirement plan is not even a blip on their radar concerning their personal net worth, then this works very well. We had a group that owns lots of real estate, hotels and high-end apartment complexes and things like that. And the highly compensated employees are basically family members. And their net worth is considerable. And the ability to defer $22,500 or $30,000 a year into a 401k plan and maybe get some employer contribution, it isn't even a thought for them. It's so far below their net worth that they don't care. But they have managers who run these properties so that they don't have to. And those managers are very valuable to them. So the managers get a generous match. And the assistant managers get a more generous match than all other employees. And all other employees, there's various staff, if you will. They often lease out the hotel properties to hotel chains who employ the people, the cleaning staff and whatnot. But they still have maintenance staff on property. And so those people are getting the 25% up to 10% match. But again, it was an easy decision to exclude the HCEs because they're all family members. They all have high net worth. The retirement plan is insignificant to their future financial goals, and that solves the problem. Because we are only dealing with non-highly compensated employees, we don't have to worry about ADP testing. We don't have to worry about ACP testing. Match can vary among the non-highly compensated groups. And excluded employees, the excluded HCEs could participate in a non-qualified arrangement, a non-qualified deferred compensation arrangement. Again, just bear in mind, not that it's a topic for this, for this class, but non-qualified deferred compensation plans work best with C corporations rather than S corporations because the C corporations has a corporate bracket, tax bracket below the S corporation owner bracket. Anyway, pros and cons, we went over those. Corporation loses immediate tax deduction for contributions to non-qualified plan. That's a bit of an assumption there that there's going to be a non-qualified plan. And should there be dissatisfaction among the differing groups? Not likely, actually, in this particular case, but okay, it's a con to think about. Profile 6, reduce costs through exclusion of seasonal employees. Simplify plan administration and data gathering. Count hours of service based on equivalency method. We actually have a school that has a lot of seasonal employees. They have a lot of summer camps. They have a lot of, and they have a K plan instead of a B plan. They have summer camps. They have theater camps. They have all kinds of temporary people, lots of them. So seasonal employees work 1,000 hours over the summer. They have 3 highly compensated employees, 20 year-round non-highly compensated employees, and 250 seasonal non-highly compensated employees. Most plans default to the actual hours of service method of crediting service to employees. In this case, it made sense to default to an alternative method, an equivalency method, and use to count hours of service. We're still based on 1,000 hours, but our people who work 3 months during the summer, they're only going to get 190 times 3 is their hours. They're not going to reach 1,000 hours of service. Therefore, they're not going to complete a year of service, and they're not going to be eligible for the plan. So we sometimes get asked, well, what about part-time employees? What about seasonal employees, that sort of thing? This is one way. It depends. Depends on what the season is. Sometimes the season is longer. We do some work for a group of many California wine producers, and they have seasonal employees that come in and work for periods of time. So it depends. If they end up working more than 3 months, 4 months, if they get into 5 months, then it gets a little dicey as to whether the equivalency method will work for them. But this is a way that we used to reduce the number of eligible employees. So the pros were we excluded the seasonal employees. Our hours of service gathering is simplified. We're using that equivalency method. Again, employees who end up working extra months, they could end up in the plan. We have to, that people have to pay attention to that. Dissatisfaction among those that are excluded. I suppose that could happen. I find that to be rare, especially in the case of the school that we talked about with the different summer programs or seasonal programs. Those folks show up, work, and then they're gone, and that's it. So that actually doesn't really occur in that situation most often. Profile 7. Getting down to the end here, folks. Sponsors' objectives to make regular Roth IRA contributions through conversions of plan assets. Now, as we go through this one, we'll touch on the non-discrimination testing, because allowing after-tax contributions and in-service distributions, this is the mega Roth idea, the super Roth idea. This is the idea that Fidelity, I've read Fidelity's article, lots of organizations put lots of articles out there about doing this, proclaiming it to be the greatest idea they ever put in print. Kind of like the New York Times, all the news that's fit to print. I always say, not so fast, my friend. Yes, it can work. But over here, if I jump over here to the far right column, plan must satisfy ACP test. That's something that a lot of people forget about. Even when the plan is a safe harbor plan otherwise, when you add in the after-tax contributions, you bring in the ACP test. So I can't tell you the number of times we've had this conversation where people say, well, we want to do a safe harbor. It's a safe harbor, so we don't have to worry about it. And in this example, we've got one highly compensated employee and one non-highly compensated employee. The plan has a 3% safe harbor contribution. That's the non-elective contribution. And the HCE earns too much to make a regular Roth IRA contribution. So in this case, we allow the after-tax contributions. The HCE is able to make $20,000 in after-tax contributions, and then they request an in-service distribution, and it goes to a Roth IRA, but the plan must pass ACP testing. And we didn't actually run, well, actually, I do. I'm looking at my notes now. We do it. So in this particular case, the HCE, their compensation is $20,000, and the their ACP actual contribution percentage test is then 10%. The non-highly compensated employee must their ACP must be 8%. Well, we're not making a matching contribution. We said we're making a 3% non-elective contribution. Presumably, we're also making profit-sharing contributions, very likely under new comparability or cross-testing. So what's the answer here? So the answer is we give the non-highly compensated employee a $1,600 qualified non-elective contribution, a QNEC, as we call it, and in addition to the safe harbor. And now we're passing testing because the QNEC solves for the ACP test. So it's funny. We get asked this question all the time about using this methodology. And I remind advisors, you still have to pass the ACP test. And they say to me, well, when does it work? When does it actually work? Well, here's an example of when it can actually work. Because the employer is giving a profit sharing anyway. And if we give, and actually I retract something I said a second ago. I said, in addition to the 3% non-elective safe harbor, if we're giving an 8% QNEC, the QNEC satisfies the 3% safe harbor. So the total contribution to the employee is 8%. And that has allowed the employer to make the extra $20,000 after-tax contribution, take an in-service withdrawal over to a Roth IRA, and now they've accomplished the popularly spoken of super IRA or super Roth. Pros and cons. HCE can make significant after-tax contributions to the plan. The after-tax contributions can be distributed and converted to a Roth IRA. Additional contributions to the NHC are required, and the plan administration is more complex. Would probably recommend prior year testing methodology so that we know what's going on. Small group like this, advisor would be in close contact with the client. You know, you paid yourself $200,000 this year, everything worked. What are you going to pay yourself next year? What's it going to look like? Obviously, if the employer has wide fluctuations in revenue and compensation that they pay themselves, this might not work as well. Their ACP might go up. The amount that they have to give their employee might go up. If they hire more employees, there's more people that are going to need to get a QNEC. So lots of conversations to have with this type of plan design. The final polling question: which plan design option allows HCEs to defer more into the plan without testing? Lizzie, do we have to stretch this out for 4 minutes to satisfy our timing here?
Yes, I'll leave this poll up for about 60 seconds in total. And then, Dave, you have one final key point slide after, so you can make any closing remarks until 2 p.m. or until 3 p.m., excuse me.
Thank you.
I'll leave the poll up for about another 20 seconds. For anyone who has not selected an answer, please do so. The poll is now closed. And Dave, like I said, we have one more closing remarks slide.
Thank you. So the key points today, and I might add one or two at the very end here. Ideal plan design helps ensure that a plan meets the sponsor's goals and objectives. Plan design has been de-emphasized in the past 10 years, maybe. I've been doing this for almost 40 years, so I can agree with that. We often pivot straight to safe harbor, and I think we demonstrated today that safe harbor is still important, but not in a vacuum. It's a good idea to have a conversation and talk about things. Opportunity exists for plan sponsors, advisors, and consultants to excel with plan design strategies. Modern pre-approved plan documents are flexible and can accommodate most plan sponsors. Again, volume submitter documents are very common, most often used, usually have all of the bells and whistles that you're ever going to want in a plan. It's very rare that an individually designed document is necessary to satisfy what most people need. Following a process facilitates plan design. It's important to have a process because you do have to you have to review this stuff. You have to check it out year after year after year. And kind of in tandem with plan design, I might just mention that sometimes plans get sideways and have to be fixed. And we spend an awful lot of time, happily, because again, I mentioned earlier, we're in the business of selling labor. Sometimes the labor that we sell is fixing broken plans. Regarding plan design, we do a great deal of plan design work through our initial sales process. So very often we're able to design things for people, give them options, talk to them about this, provide that consulting, and it's part of our sales process. Nobody's going to get an invoice from us most of the time for plan design, unless it's a special project that we talk about ahead of time and say, look, in order to do this for you, we're going to have to send you a bill. That's oftentimes when it involves multiple employers, control groups, that kind of thing. So, again, thank you for your time today. I think Lizzie said earlier, if you have questions, submit them. We'll reach back to you with answers. We'll provide answers to everybody and questions to everybody, and there'll be a recording of this available to you, I think, through an email tomorrow. Lizzie, anything else I need to cover?
Nope, Dave, you just about covered it. So thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Like you mentioned, any questions that were submitted, we will follow up with you separately. And as a reminder, just please complete the survey questions that pop up on your screen in just a minute. And everyone have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.